Today is December 17th, 2022, and we have a very special guest on the show today, Luis Garate. Luis joins us from Lima, Peru. Luis is a journalist, political leader, and activist. In addition to being a freelance journalist, Luis is the Director of Comunicambio. Comunicambio is an alternative social and political information platform which seeks to promote alternative and marginalized voices and ideas and support historical awareness and generate progressive and positive structural changes in Peru. Luis is also a former alderman for Metropolitan Lima. Luis, thank you so much for coming back on the show today. Welcome back on the show, and you've sort of become our Peruvian correspondent.
Thank you for that, Ryan. Nice greeting you and all the viewers there in the United States.
So I wanted to talk to you about the events of December 7, 2022 in Peru with the arrest and removal from power of President Pedro Castillo. When you were last on the show this past August, you outlined the fact that since the beginning of Castillo's presidency, it's been marred by both external and internal attacks. But can you bring us up to speed on what led to the events of December 7, 22, and what happened on that day?
Yeah, Ryan, what happened December 7th is that, the Congress, the majority at the Congress of Peru, a right-wing, an ultra-right-wing majority, arranged to have a third impeachment, or in Spanish, vacancia, or I don't know if the translation is vacancy, something like that, but political impeachment for, throwing away the President Pedro Castillo. So it was expected a new voting session on the 7th of December, but so what we were seeing around the media and some opinion leaders that were talking about this is that even this was a third way of trying to bring down President Castillo. These right-wing congressmen, they didn't have all the votes they need. They needed 87 votes from 130 that are the members of parliament of Congress in Peru. So they didn't reach the 87th seats or the 87 votes that they need to throw and get rid of Pedro Castillo as president. But what happened is that, for the surprise of everyone, almost a lot of the assessment people and all of the minister of the cabinet of Pedro Castillo, what happened is that on that day, on the 7th of December, at more or less at 11:30 in the morning, Pedro Castillo was alive in the TV station, the public station, giving a speech calling for a auto coup d'état. That was that happens that day. That he made a speech very similar to the speech that Alberto Fujimori gave in 1992, calling for the dissolution of parliament and dissolution of almost all the state agencies and judiciary power and the other part of the institutional system in Peru. That's what happened. He gave a speech calling out the dissolution of the Congress, but also the dissolution and reorganization of other power institutions of the judiciary system in Peru. So that was the calling of an auto coup d'état. But what happened is that immediately, as he was giving that speech, immediately almost all the ministers of his cabinet, renounce, get out. they escape from the government, and immediately all the institutions that he tried to to close, to reorganize. I mean, the judicial power, the constitutional tribune, the the election system, the electionary system, the armed forces and policemen, they all reject this President Castillo speech. And as he was he gave this speech, he was like escaping from the main palace, the government palace, trying to get to the embassy, the Mexico embassy. But what happened is that the policemen that were taking him as as guards, they were in touch with the judiciary system and the police system, and they captured, they take away Castillo and his family immediately to the nearest police station. So he was captured, arguing that he, as he made or he called for a coup d'etat, he was getting against the constitution, so he was like immediately captured. There is a debate about if it's a legal or not measure of that. But what happened is that as he made this calling for a coup d'etat, immediately 1-2 hours after that, the Congress they call an emergency session, and they vote immediately, and in a very questionable, very debatable as they vote for the vacancy, for the impeachment. Immediately they vote for the impeachment of Pedro Castillo, and the succession of the vice president of Pedro Castillo, that is the Miss Dina Boluarte, that immediately was get as president of Peru, following the constitutional order. So what I think it happens is that in a very strange, and we are like here in Peru, like a debate, a political, judiciary, legal debate about what happened with Pedro Castillo calling to that measure, because almost all the analysts, political analysts, agree that it was very less probably that the Congress could that day reach the 87 vote for the throwing of Pedro Castillo. But he made this desperate measure, and he gave, as we say in Spanish here, like in like a present, his head, not to the right and ultra right people at the Congress, that they immediately reached 104 voting for throwing up and getting rid of Pedro Castillo. That's what happened. And then immediately, as we, every Peruvian here, notice in the news, that this change of the presidency, that we start seeing around the many cities in Peru, mainly in the regions in Peru, the protests, people getting out the streets and reclaiming, for immediate renouncing of Dina Boluarte as president, immediately new elections, general elections, the calling of the Constitutional Assembly for a new constitution, and most of the protests also calling for the liberation of Pedro Castillo, that was in jail, in prison, as I told you. That was more or less the chronology of that day, more or less.
So in other words, Pedro Castillo sort of gave prior to December 7th, Pedro Castillo didn't, the Congress didn't have the votes to impeach him, but by making an unwise political decision and trying to vacate the Congress and the judiciary and all the establishment of power, he gave them the sufficient votes in Congress to impeach him.
That's what more even progressive analysts also are surprised about this, no? Because there's like an agreement. I am not saying that this is a totally proved thing. I think this is a speculation, no? That we don't have certainty about that, but there were like agreement that they are not the right wing, no, they didn't have the vote for the impeachment, no. But with that measure that he called, of course, they were like, it was a precedent, no, to make the immediate justification for the immediate impeachment of Castillo. That's what happened.
And prior, when we last spoke, I think we discussed this, prior to December 7th, Dina Boluarte, his vice president, she was also under attack from the right wing. Is that correct?
Yeah, at first he was part of the government, so of course the opposition, the right wing, was attacking also her, and they were investigating her because of some things very like how do you say this, some sort of how the word, I don't have the word, but because he was part of a regional private club, so some legal stuff about that, but it wasn't really a you know, like a very big legal or political problem, because the right wing was trying to search for anything that they could find to get rid of Castillo and all the government. But very strangely, something like a week before the December 7th, the Congress, you know, forget about this investigation. They say, no, there is nothing here in this case, so we, you know, get rid of this investigation to the archives. It was something, you know, there, some people are like saying, what happened there? No, the strange coincidence, you know, of things. But that was happening, and also, Dina Boluarte was a part of the cabinet, the minister cabinet of Pedro Castillo. But she, when Castillo changed, like more than a week before this situation that we were talking about, when he changed to the prime minister to be Betsy Chavez as prime minister, Dina Boluarte renounced also from the her as minister of social development. So she was like making some distance, you know, from Pedro Castillo some days before this situation. So that's a very one thing to analyze more and to search for more information about that thing, no? But that's what happened, no? Objectively, this what I am telling is what we know already. We all from public opinion. That's information I'm telling you.
Okay. On December 14th, 2022, Vijay Prasad and Jose Carlos Llarena wrote an excellent article entitled "The U.S. Egged on the Coup in Peru," which was published in People's Dispatch, which outlines the influence of the U.S. in the ouster of President Castillo. What is your sense of the role of the U.S. In these attacks on Castillo?
I really don't know. I haven't read this article, but my opinion, I think this, what I'm going to tell you is, of course, part of a debate. I'm not saying this is the true and you know, writing in stone, as we say in Spanish. I think that Pedro Castillo wasn't from the beginning like, you know, in a confrontation with the U.S. external policy. I think it's totally the contrary. I think there's a lot of proof that, or things that prove that there were a good relation with the U.S. government. Part of what I'm telling, I can prove this because of the relation of Castillo with the OEA, with the the Organization of American States, no,
Well,
and
yes.
with his president, Mr. Almagro. No, there was a very strong and near relation, and speech of Castillo, greeting Almagro and greeting the, OEA. So, no, OAS, no, OAS, I think in English. So that for me is one of the demonstrations and the meetings between Castillo and Biden, and Castillo with Almagro, and Castillo with the American embassy here in Lima. Part of a demonstration that Castillo really never was an anti-imperialist leader, or really he didn't matter a lot of having an independent and progressive external policy for Peru. But totally the contrary. I think he was like a very in touch and in a good relation with these agencies and the American government. No, so also a lot of the American political positions about Castillo was very like comprehensive. No, we recognize the Peruvian government. Pedro Castillo is president of Peru. We never listen some speech from the State Department of the Biden or world representative of the states telling that Peru or the Pedro Castillo was a menace or was part of this red or anti-imperialist government that are so molesting from the U.S. government, like Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba. No, I think they didn't consider him as a menace. Totally the contrary. Maybe they were working really to get more close to Castillo and to get more like being like in the area of influence of the U.S. So Castillo made some gestures of to some progressive governments, for example, the relations, recovering the diplomatic relations with Venezuela. That maybe could be the only progressive measure that I remember from the Castillo government. Then I don't remember anything more. Totally contrary, more like a good, fluent relation with the U.S. government. So maybe at the last, I think, when Pedro Castillo made the calling of the auto coup d'etat, then I heard Almagro saying that Castillo blew up the all the OIS and the U.S. intention of getting a dialogue, political dialogue for solution of the political problems of Peru. There, when the coup d'etat, but before, there was total support of the OIS and the U.S. government to Castillo government. That's what I think.
One would have to imagine that the Biden in the U.S. would prefer the right wing and Fujimori. I would guess, though, wouldn't you think?
Can you ask me again, please? I didn't understand what the
Yeah,
question.
no, my apologies. That one would have to assume that the U.S. would prefer Fujimori and the other right-wing leaders over Castillo.
That's a good question. But I think that what happened is that Keiko Fujimori and his party, they are totally involved in corruption cases, involvement with the narco traffic and other criminal situations. So they are really a political menace for democracy and for transparency on the fight against corruption. So maybe I think what happened is that the USA noticed that getting too near to Keiko Fujimori could be too dangerous because of these, relations of Fujimori with criminal organizations or narco traffic and corruption cases. Maybe I think is that not that they don't think that Keiko Fujimori could be a strong ally. That I think it's so. No, they are allied of the U.S. interest, government interest. But I think maybe they notice that they are so strong, the cases and the accusations to Fujimori and her party, that is not the best option to to support. Remember that her father, Alberto Fujimori, fell down because the U.S. also they leave Fujimori because the cases of corruption cases and the cases of narcotraffic involucration of Fujimori and Montesinos were so evident that I think they say we cannot support this government, no, because it's so dramatic, the relation so obvious that it's not the best for the American interest to support these people. Maybe I think could be this as a hypothesis. No?
But don't you assume that the right wing will take advantage of this situation in Peru?
Right now, you see,
Yes.
of course. I mean, the falling down of Castillo is for the right wing and ultra wing forces here like a victory. They are like happy and they are like totally. They think this a victory from them, but they didn't realize the social and political response of a lot, thousands of Peruvian people, social organizations around all Peru that are right now where we are talking, fighting and in the streets, asking for the Congress to be, shut down and closed, and immediately new elections because they are totally tired of this crisis. And I have to say that the Congress in Peru is the main institution with less approved in all the how you say this the political polls, no, is the institution with the less approval, totally disapproved by the Peruvian people. And with what they did, the throwing down Castillo is worse. So thousands of Peruvian people and social organizations right now are fighting and in the streets, fighting and struggling for the throwing out, out the Congress right now.
And what has been the response from leaders in the region to Castillo being removed from power?
That's a good question also, because I think most of the progressive democratic governments around Latin America, they are very comprehensive with Castillo. I think they thought that, as I was telling you from the other dialogue we had last time, they thought, I think most of them, they still think this, that Castillo was, he reached as a very progressive and left-wing president, as he reached and he won the elections. But when he arrived and he started, in the government, as I told you, and I ratify this right now, he started like getting some pragmatic alliances and forgetting about all the promises, no, about political and social transformations in Peru. So I think they still think that Castillo is that I think this is right. He's a democratic elected president. He's a person, a leader that comes from the very low classes, the low classes. He's a rural, a popular teacher. That's all true. But he, a lot of months ago, he wasn't more a progressive president. He was simply a president that he was trying to survive and making alliances and making appointments, that were totally pragmatic and with no only trying to survive the accusations of the opposition of corruption cases, and mainly corruption cases. So I think what many of these governments, for example, like Mexico with AMLO, or Fernandez of Argentina, or for example Petro in Colombia, they are very comprehensive with Castillo, and they are saying they're not recognizing the new government because they think there was a coup d'etat here in Peru, of the right wing, the anti-democratic opposition, no, Castillo must be recognized as president. I think there is something right in this perception, but they are not seeing, I think, the whole picture. It's more complex. I agree with the main thing that the political right wing, the opposition in Peru, isn't democratic. It's authoritarian, almost near to fascist in some ways, and they always were fighting to Castillo since he won the election. You know that I told you last time also that they were like making authoritarian and violent methods to our away a Castillo. That's right. That we must emphasize that. But the picture is more complex, and I was told you Castillo was like an auto liquidation. No, he like made a political suicide, something like this. No, because as I told you, he gave all the arguments to the oppositions to throw him down. That's what happened. No, so the Castillo supporters, I want to tell you, the Castillo supporters are telling that he is only a victim. He was a victim of a coup d'état. That's true, but we have to get a little bit some hours before what happens. No, he made a calling for a coup d'état, no, an anti-democratic and measure that, of course, it was going to be rejected by the other political powers in Peru, of course. So he gave, as I told you, his presidency and Peru, he gave it like to the right wing forces, something like this, no?
Yeah, but he gave the opposition, he gave the right wing the political ammunition to get
Of course,
87
of
votes
course, of course.
to impeach him.
Yeah.
What has been the response from the Peruvian people to Castillo's arrest and removal?
I think with the Castillo removal and mainly with the arrest of Castillo, there is a very strong symbolic message from all of Peruvian people, no, that the political upper classes, the upper classes, the higher classes, the rich powers, the bourgeoisie and the power, or the real power in Peru, they didn't tolerate a poor president, a president that comes from the highlands, no. So that's why these people, these upper classes, these political powers and economical powers, they were also always accusing Castillo as communists, as terrorists. But what happened, I want not to repeat the same thing, is that Castillo forget about this, but with the throwing of Castillo and the arrest, he's seen like a victim of the system. And we understand that. So many people that are protesting in Peru are saying Castillo is a victim of the system. That's why most of the protests are asking for the liberation of Pedro Castillo. No, mainly they are not asking for the return of Castillo as president. Some of the people are asking for that. Mainly the supporters. There are some people, some organizations that Castillo supported, but main organizations, the more of them, they are calling for the liberation of Pedro Castillo because they think the judiciary are totally, like what is happening in other countries in Latin America, with this lawfare strategy. They are like in touch with the military and the political right wing in a strategy of persecuting Castillo and all his government. So now there's a perception of a victimization of Pedro Castillo, that is a victim of this upper classes and political power system, no?
So I live in the U.S., as you know, and the media here portrays the arrest and removal of Castillo in a very positive way, kind of the opposite of what we've been discussing. But and so I guess one thing that they don't talk about is how large scale the protests are, and my understanding is that the protesters even shut down the airport. And what is, how large scale is the protest, and what has been the government's response to the protesters?
Well, Ryan, the protests really are huge in Peru. Since we talk about this transition made in December 7th, the protests were getting stronger and stronger, mainly and in the regions around Peru, almost in main capitals of the regions of Peru, from Puno, the highland regions of the South Highlands, from Puno, Arequipa, Cusco, Ayacucho, Moquegua, in the Central Highlands, in Junín, in the Amazonican region, the North part regions of La Libertad, Piura, Cajamarca, almost all the main capitals of the regions of Peru, there were protests, huge protests of social organizations, peasants organizations, workers organizations, students organizations, and people of all kind getting on the street to reject this measure called from the Congress, and the armed force, the policemen, and the new president Dina Boluarte. And what happened is that in the protests, we had some cases, not mainly, but some cases, as you told, that of extreme violence, some aggressions or violence against some public buildings, the judiciary or the policeman stations in some cities, all the violence against some airports around, for example, what happened in Arequipa or in Cusco, Ayacucho, some highland regions on the south part of Peru. And the response, some hours later, was from the president, Dina Boluarte, was calling for what we call here an emergency state. Not what right now in Peru, all Peru is right now under an emergency state, an exceptional state. That we are right now, the policeman or the military can get here in my home, and they can take me in prison, and I don't have rights. The rights are like, are cut right now because we are under an emergency state. So there's no liberty for meetings, from protests, for expression of individual rights, because the president have made this calling for the policemen and the armed forces to take control of the situation. So what is happening is that response of the armed forces and policemen is totally extreme, and we are having in most of the protests a repression, totally extreme repression, using war weaponry, and they are we have more than 24 deaths right now. I think we are like the last number I know is 24 death people. Maybe right now is getting up that number. As I know, some hours ago, we have 24 dead people because of the use of war weaponry from the armed forces and the police forces, that they are from helicopters and directly with snipers. They are killing the protesters that are using sometimes, in some cases, stones on that kind of stuff for fighting the police and repressive forces. But the response is extreme, and they are like using this extreme war weaponry that is we have to denounce that to the international community, because they are killing the people, young people, 15 years old, 20 years old, 18 years old guys that were like in the protest, and they are killing them like, I don't know, if they were rats. It's really a very outrageous, and we are very indignated here in Peru because of the political measures that is taking the government of Dina Boluarte and the armed forces and police.
Yeah, I mean, even the repression I've seen, and of course not from the mainstream media in the U.S. With the last number I heard was 17. So the fact that it's already at 24 protesters that have been killed is outrageous. I mean, totally outrageous. I wanted to go through. I wanted to ask you about one of the demands that I've heard about. You listed some of the demands from the protesters. The release Pedro Castillo, new elections as soon as possible, and even the one demand I wanted to ask you about was the removal of Dina Boluarte from power. That to me seems like an unwise demand because the right wing would just take over because the head of the Congress would be the next one in line for power, and the head of the Congress is a member of the right wing and aligned with Fujimori. What are your thoughts about that demand?
Look, that's a very interesting thing you mentioned because as you say right now, that are the main, demands of the people. The immediately new elections, the new constitutional assembly, and most of the protests are calling for the resignation of Dina Boluarte. But what is going to happen with that? If Dina Boluarte right now renounces, the new president is going to be Jose Williams, that is a retired army general that was involved in human rights violations during the war with Sendero Shining Path in the 80s. And he was one of the main operative chiefs in the recuperation of the Japan embassy during the MRTA, take of the Japanese embassy in Lima. Remember in the 90s, in the late 90s. So this guy is a totally ultra right wing politic leader. So if you gave the power right now, to these people, I don't know. We are going to be like in a civil war. I don't know. It's a totally dangerous, I think. So I'm not supporting. I'm not telling that Dina Boluarte is a good president, a democratic president. I think she's making a lot of mistakes and very huge and dangerous mistakes with her attitude, her cabinet, and these measures I told you right now, the state emergency around the Peru. But her resignation is very dangerous, I think. Very, very dangerous. I think more dangerous than her president right now. Maybe. So we are in a very difficult and a very dangerous situation right now in Peru because there is an escalation, or there is growing of the authoritarian and repressive menace in Peru right now. As we are talking, the repressive and authoritarian tendency is growing in Peru. That's a real thing. And today, for example, the policemen were entering some, getting in some social agrupations and political left parties today in the morning. They were getting in the offices of the some peasants organizations here in Lima, some left-wing parties. They were getting into searching for protesting leaders. So we are very frightened or worry about this growing of the authoritarian and repressive tendency in the political situation.
Wow, so the police were raiding the offices or homes of left-wing leaders throughout Peru.
Yeah, the offices, not of the leaders, I mean the houses, by the offices of the some political parties and some social movements, like the peasants, one of the peasants organization of Peru.
And I guess this probably is too soon to even ask you this question, but where do you see the political situation in Peru heading? How do you see the situation resolving or not?
That's a very difficult question, Ryan, to answer. I maybe give some hypotheses of possible ways of getting out of this crisis. As I was telling you right now, one very dangerous scenario is getting worst authoritarian and way. Maybe the resignation of Dina Boluarte and the Williams getting as president, the president of the Congress. That would be a very totally disastrous and dangerous scenario. But other scenario is that right now the Congress must vote for the proposal of a law of the Dina Boluarte's president for the new elections to have to be made in the 2023, the next year. But the Congress rejected the proposal, so the Congress must right now help to resolve this crisis. But I think that all the government and the Congress, they are not incapable of resolving the main problem of the crisis. So what I think is that only the social pressure and the protests are going to push for the main way of getting out of this crisis. I think that's the only way, because right now there's like the government trying to make a proposal, the Congress, they are not helping to get the solution, and there's like the confrontation doesn't resolve. So only the social pressure could make force these institutions to make a solution, a way. I think as member of one political party, of one of the communist parties here in Peru, we are asking to accelerate the constitutional assembly, as what happened in Chile. Remember in Chile what happened with the huge protests of 2019, 2020. The solution was an arrangement between the government and the Congress to call for an assembly, now constitutional assembly. So I think that's not only the new election is going to resolve the problem here in Peru, that almost also the calling of a constitutional assembly. We are trying to get that demand to be approved, but the Congress, they don't want to discuss the thing. So only the citizens and the social protest can with the pressure and the protest, I think that's the only way that to reach this result. No?
And Dina Boluarte has been talking about elections in 2024. Has a faster or earlier timeline been suggested?
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing because it's a more technical thing about how you're reach a very transparent and a well done election. It's not so easy to have the elections here in 1 month. It's impossible. No, that's impossible. You have to plan and to organize to have a transparent, a decent electoral process. But there is like an agreement to have them in 2023. No. At the September, November, or something like that. But we have to have an agreement between the government and the Congress, mainly because the Congress is the institution that have to approve this. So right now we don't have the solution right now. So what people are calling in the streets is for the elections to be the faster that it can be. So I think that the 2023 is more realistic year to have this election.
Those are all the questions I have for you for today. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss before we finish?
No, Ryan, thank you very much with this dialogue, with this interest of the Peruvian situation. I want only to ask for all your viewers and the people around the world and around, in the US to be aware of the political situation in Peru, to be very, trying to get information not only with the neoliberal media, but the alternative media also, to have the other look of this crisis, and to be aware because we need solidarity for the citizens of our brothers and sisters around the world, because we need solidarity against the repression, against the authoritarian tendencies, against the killing of innocent people that is happening here in Peru. We have to denounce this by a systematic violation of human rights, systematic violation of our citizens' rights, and this authoritarian menace that is real, as I was telling you, is totally real. And we need to stop this, and we need the eyes of the world to be aware of Peruvian situation, to return to a democratic system, and to have well done elections that are supervised or with the help of the watching of international organizations around the world. So that's what we maybe my calling, to you and to all your viewers, to be very aware of our situation and our denouncing of these menaces to the Peruvian democracy and Peruvian way of growing and development.
Yes, thank you for saying that, and thank you for helping us understand what's actually going on in a much more complex way than what we're seeing in the U.S. media and what we're seeing other places. I have a non-serious question. I don't know if you're watching Los Mundiales, the World Cup, but who are you rooting for, or who do you think is going to win tomorrow?
I don't know. I'm not really so near to I'm not following so too much. But we in Peru, we are very strong, supporters of Argentina, for example. I don't know if they are passing right now to the final rounds, but we support a lot Argentina, for example. We love a lot the Argentinian people and of course the Argentina team, no? So we hope they can reach the final, of course.
Yes, yeah. Tomorrow it's Argentina versus France.
So we support Argentina, of course, from Peru.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming back on the show and for essentially being our correspondent in Peru. And we hope to have you back again soon.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Nice to meet you again. And we are always here, to help you and to talk about the Peruvian and other problems around the world.
Thank you.